The first image most Americans still carry of Mary Lou Retton is not a woman in a hospital bed. It is not oxygen tubes. It is not a frightened family waiting for doctors to say whether she might breathe on her own again. No. For most people, Mary Lou is still 16 years old. She is still standing in Los Angeles in the summer of 1984, small enough to look almost swallowed by the Olympic arena, but powerful enough to make an entire country rise from its living room couch. She is still smiling that wide West Virginia smile, still saluting the judges, still running toward the vault with a bandaged knee, a brave face, and the kind of pressure no teenager should have to carry alone. That is the strange thing about becoming a national memory. The public keeps you young. Life does not. In October 2023, nearly 4 decades after that perfect Olympic night, Mary Lou Retton's name returned to the news in a way that made people stop scrolling. Her daughter McKenna shared that her mother was in intensive care with a rare form of pneumonia. She could not breathe on her own. The words were simple, but they landed hard. Mary Lou Retton was fighting for her life. For people who grew up watching her, it felt almost impossible to place those words beside that face. This was the gymnast who had once seemed made of bounce, muscle, joy, and American certainty. This was the young woman who had made the vault look like flight. And now, at 55, she was lying in a Texas hospital, trying to survive one breath at a time. That is where this story has to begin. Not with the gold medal, with the breathing. Because the real question is not whether Mary Lou Retton was great. America already knows that. The real question is what happened to the girl after the arena lights went dark, after the interviews ended, after the Wheaties box became a keepsake, after the country moved on to newer champions, and left her to live inside a body that had paid dearly for greatness. Mary Lou was born on January 24, 1968, in Fairmont, West Virginia. A coal country girl. The kind of place where people knew your family, your church, your school, your story. She was not raised in glamour. She came from a working, close-knit world where toughness was not something you announced. You just got up and did what had to be done. As a child, she watched Nadia Comaneci and felt something unlock inside her. That Romanian perfection, those tens in Montreal in 1976, reached all the way into a little girl's imagination in West Virginia. Mary Lou wanted that life badly enough to leave home while still young and move to Houston, Texas, to train under Baylor and Marta Karolyi. That decision sounds clean when people summarize it. It was not clean. It meant distance from home, long practices, repetition until the body ached, the loss of normal teenage days. While other girls were going to dances, hanging around after school, learning who they were slowly, Mary Lou was learning how to land, how to smile through pain, how to make fear look like confidence. And then, just weeks before the 1984 Olympics, her right knee betrayed her. She injured it badly enough to need arthroscopic surgery. For most athletes, that would have been the end of the dream, or at least the end of that summer. But Mary Lou rushed through recovery because the Olympics were in Los Angeles, because the Soviet boycott had changed the field, because opportunity had arrived and would not wait politely for a teenage girl's knee to heal. On August 3, 1984, she entered the final rotation of the women's all-around against Romania's Ekaterina Sabo. She needed something close to impossible. Then she got it. A perfect 10 on vault. America saw the landing, the raised arms, the smile, the disbelief. Mary Lou Retton became the first American woman to win the Olympic all-around title. She finished those games with 5 medals, 1 gold, 2 silver, and 2 bronze. And just like that, she belonged to everyone. Presidents wanted to meet her. Companies wanted her face. Families wanted their daughters to be like her. She became a symbol of the 1980s, patriotic, cheerful, determined, bright enough to sell cereal and strong enough to make people cry. But symbols do not have knees that throb in the dark. Women do. Years later, Mary Lou would speak openly about the toll gymnastics had taken on her body. More than 30 orthopedic operations, hips, knees, the price of a sport that rewards children for doing things the adult body remembers with pain. The perfect 10 stayed beautiful on television, but the landings did not disappear. They followed her. She married Shannon Kelly in 1990. They had 4 daughters. For a long stretch, her life became quieter, not empty, just different. Motherhood replaced the Olympic schedule. Speeches replaced competition. Public appearances came and went. She was still famous, but fame changes shape when you are no longer the girl on the podium. Then came divorce in 2018 after 27 years of marriage. Then came the pandemic. Then came financial strain, fewer speaking opportunities, and a health insurance situation she later said she could no longer afford because of cost and pre-existing conditions. And then came the pneumonia. In early 2024, when Mary Lou spoke with Hoda Kotb, viewers saw something they were not prepared for. She was grateful, emotional, still recovering, still uncertain. She said she did not know how long she might need oxygen. That one detail changed the whole memory of her. The girl who once flew was now measuring life by breath. That does not erase 1984, it makes it more human. Because Mary Lou Retton's story was never only about a perfect vault, it was about what a body can give, what fame can take, and what remains when America's sweetheart grows older, gets hurt, gets scared, and still has to wake up the next morning and fight for one more ordinary day. Before America knew her as the girl with the perfect 10, Mary Lou Retton was a child watching another girl become impossible. It was 1976, Montreal. Nadia Comaneci was only 14, and the scoreboard was not even built to show what she had done. A perfect 10 appeared as 100, because Olympic gymnastics had not prepared itself for perfection. Somewhere in Fairmont, West Virginia, Mary Lou watched and felt her life tilt toward one direction. She wanted that. Not the fame exactly, not the cereal box, not the speeches that would come later. She wanted the feeling of being that strong, that precise, that undeniable. Fairmont was not the center of the gymnastics world. It was a working town with hills, families, churches, and ordinary expectations. Mary Lou's father, Ronnie, had played college basketball. Her mother, Lois, became one of the steady forces behind her dream. But no parent could do the hardest part for her. No one could stretch the hours, soften the landings, or make a little girl's body ignore pain. By her early teens, Mary Lou's talent had outgrown home. That is when the family made the decision that still carries a quiet sadness beneath the glory. She left West Virginia and moved to Houston to train with Bella and Marta Karoli, the same Romanian coaching force connected to Nadia's rise. On paper, it looks like ambition. In real life, it meant a young girl leaving the comfort of home because greatness was somewhere else. There were long practices, strict corrections, repeated routines, until they stopped feeling like routines and started feeling like survival. Mary Lou was naturally powerful, compact, explosive. She did not glide through gymnastics like a delicate figure in a music box. She attacked it. Her tumbling had force. Her vault had speed. Her smile made the force look friendly. That smile became part of her armor. People saw joy, and there was joy. But there was also pressure. There was the knowledge that one mistake could undo years of work. There was the loneliness that comes when a child is praised for being extraordinary before she has had enough time to be ordinary. By 1984, Mary Lou was no longer just promising. She was dangerous. She won the American Cup. She won the US Nationals. She won the Olympic trials. The timing looked perfect until her knee locked while she was doing a floor routine just weeks before the Los Angeles Games. She needed surgery. That is the part people often rush past. A teenage girl had her knee operated on 5 weeks before the most important competition of her life. Then she came back fast, maybe too fast by ordinary standards, because Olympic windows do not stay open forever. When she arrived in Los Angeles, she carried a healing knee, a country's hope, and the unspoken fear that the dream could still collapse. The world remembers the landing. Mary Lou had to remember everything it cost to get there. The night Mary Lou Retton became unforgettable was not as simple as America later made it sound. Memory has a way of cleaning things up. It keeps the smile. It keeps the flag. It keeps the perfect 10. It forgets the swollen knee, the pressure in the arena, the politics around the games, and the fact that a 16-year-old girl was being asked to carry a country's hope on a body that had just been repaired. The 1984 Olympics were held in Los Angeles, and for American viewers, those games felt personal. They were bright, patriotic, televised, and close to home. Families watched together in a way people rarely do now. There were no phones in their hands, no second screen, just the television, the announcers, the crowd, and that small gymnast in red, white, and blue. But the competition itself had complications that are easy to overlook. The Soviet Union and several Eastern Bloc countries boycotted the Games. That meant some of the world's strongest gymnasts were not there. Critics would later use that fact to shrink what Mary Lou did, as if absence made pressure disappear. It did not. The athletes who were there still had to compete. They still had to hit. They still had to survive the moment. And Ekaterina Szabo of Romania was very real. Szabo was elegant, gifted, and dangerous. She was not a background character in Mary Lou's story. She was the gymnast standing between Mary Lou and history. Through the all-around competition, the two pushed each other until the final rotation became almost unbearable. Mary Lou needed perfection. That word sounds beautiful when people say it years later. In the arena, it is cruel. Perfection leaves no room for a breath taken too early. A shoulder dropped slightly. A landing that moves half an inch. It asks a child to be more exact than fear. Before the vault, Bela Karolyi was there with all his intensity. Mary Lou had trained for this moment, but training does not remove terror. It only gives terror somewhere to go. She ran down the vault runway with the kind of speed that made people sit forward. Her body hit the springboard. She rose, she turned, she opened, and then she landed. No step, no wobble, no apology. The crowd inside Pauley Pavilion exploded before the score confirmed what everyone had felt. A perfect 10. She would also score another 10 on floor. By the end of the night, Mary Lou Retton had become the first American woman to win the Olympic all-around gold medal. She left Los Angeles with 5 medals in all. Gold in the all-around, silver in team and vault, bronze in uneven bars and floor exercise. For a moment, America did not just admire her. America claimed her. She became the girl on the cereal box, the guest on television shows, the smiling proof that a small-town American kid could still become a national hero. President Ronald Reagan met her. Sponsors called, cameras followed. She was suddenly more than an athlete. She was a feeling people wanted to keep. But that kind of love has a hidden weight. Mary Lou retired from competitive gymnastics in 1986, still a teenager. Think about that for a moment. Most people at that age are only beginning to wonder who they are. Mary Lou had already reached the highest point of her sport, become famous across the country, and stepped away from the only life that had given her an identity. What you do after your greatest public moment happens before you are old enough to understand the rest of your life. For Mary Lou, the answer was not one thing. It was appearances, endorsements, speeches, school events, television opportunities, and eventually the long work of building an adult life under the shadow of a teenage miracle. People did not always ask who she had become. They wanted to remember who she had been. That is the part fame rarely explains. The world kept asking for the girl from 1984. Mary Lou had to become a woman anyway. The hardest part of Mary Lou Retton's fame may not have been winning the gold. It may have been living after it. Not because she disappeared. She did not. She stayed visible for years. Commercials, speeches, public appearances, charity events, television guest spots. She smiled in the way America expected her to smile, and most of the time that was enough for people. They did not need the full woman. They wanted the memory. That is a strange bargain for an athlete who becomes famous young. The country remembers your brightest moment with perfect clarity, but it does not always follow you patiently through the quieter years. Mary Lou was still a teenager when she retired from elite gymnastics in 1986. By then, her body had already done things most bodies were never meant to do. The vaults, the landings, the repetitions, the pressure on joints that were still growing. The audience saw medals. Her body kept receipts. Over the years, Mary Lou would speak about the surgeries. More than 30 orthopedic procedures. Knees, hips, pain that did not make headlines the way a perfect 10 did. It is easy to watch Olympic gymnastics and forget how young the athletes are, how much force their bodies absorb, and how quickly glory becomes something they have to physically carry for the rest of their lives. Mary Lou carried it with that familiar brightness, But brightness should not be mistaken for ease. In 1990, she married Shannon Kelly, a former University of Texas quarterback. For a while, their life had the clean outline people like to imagine for American sports heroes. Olympic champion, college football player, marriage, 4 daughters, a large family, a home life away from the arena. Their daughters, Shayla, McKenna, Skylar, and Emma, grew up with a mother whose name meant something to millions of strangers. That can be beautiful, but it can also be complicated. Mary Lou was not only mom. She was a national symbol who still belonged in some emotional way to people she had never met. And motherhood changed the shape of her story. It pulled her toward ordinary things: school schedules, family meals, injuries, not in an Olympic arena, but in the everyday chaos of raising children. The kind of love that does not come with medals, the kind of work that no audience applauds. For years, Mary Lou gave speeches about determination, faith, family, and the lessons of competition. She became part of the American motivational circuit, a familiar figure who could walk onto a stage and bring people back to 1984 almost instantly. The crowd would remember the vault. She would talk about discipline, confidence, belief, and the courage to keep going. But life was moving in directions no speech could fully control. After 27 years of marriage, Mary Lou and Shannon divorced in 2018. She later spoke about how difficult that period was, especially after so many years of being part of a family structure she had built her adult life around. Divorce at midlife is not just paperwork. It is a private rearranging of identity. The future you thought you understood suddenly looks different. For someone whose early life had been built around certainty, targets, scores, and routines, that kind of emotional uncertainty must have been its own event. She also stepped back into the public eye in unexpected ways. In 2018, she appeared on Dancing with the Stars. Viewers saw something softer than the Olympic champion they remembered. She was older, emotional, and no longer protected by the invincible glow of youth. At times, the show seemed to bring up memories she had spent years carrying quietly. There was still the smile, but now there were tears behind it. That mattered, because Mary Lou Retton had spent much of her life representing strength in a very American way. Smile through it, work harder, stick the landing, be grateful, keep moving. But aging has a way of asking different questions. What if the landing hurts? What if the marriage ends? What if the body breaks down? What if the public still sees the girl, but the woman needs room to be tired? Those years after competition did not destroy Mary Lou's legacy. They deepened it. They showed that the perfect 10 was never the full story. It was one shining moment inside a much longer life. A life with children, pain, faith, divorce, aging, and the quiet search for peace after fame. America remembered Mary Lou as the girl who landed without moving. But the woman she became had to learn something harder. How to keep standing when life would not stay still. The crisis did not announce itself like an Olympic final. There was no music, no crowd, no judges, no red, white, and blue leotard. Just a quiet home, a woman struggling for air, and a neighbor who noticed something was wrong. In 2023, Mary Lou Retton was living far away from the version of herself America liked to replay. She was not the teenage champion from Los Angeles anymore. She was a divorced mother of 4 grown daughters, still carrying the pain of decades of orthopedic damage, still trying to work when she could, still trying to keep her life moving forward after the pandemic had interrupted the speaking events that had supported much of her post-Olympic career. Then came the illness. Her family later said she was diagnosed with a rare form of pneumonia. The details around the exact medical cause remained limited, but the severity was not in doubt. Mary Lou was placed in intensive care. She could not breathe on her own. Her daughters were frightened enough to share the news publicly and ask for help with medical costs. That request brought love, it also brought judgment, because Mary Lou did not have health insurance at the time. For some people, that fact became a second story, almost louder than the illness itself. They asked how an Olympic champion could be uninsured. They asked where the money had gone. They asked questions with the cold confidence of people who were not standing in a hospital hallway, wondering if their mother would survive the night. Mary Lou later explained that after her divorce, after COVID, and after more than 30 orthopedic operations that counted as pre-existing conditions, she could not afford the insurance costs. Her daughter McKenna also said Mary Lou had lost work during the pandemic because speaking events stopped. It was a painful admission from a woman once presented as the smiling face of American success. The fundraising campaign brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars. It helped pay medical bills, and it also exposed her family to criticism. In 2024, Mary Lou defended her daughters, saying they had done what they thought was necessary to save her life. That is the part that feels different when you are older. You understand that dignity and desperation can exist in the same room. Mary Lou eventually came home, but coming home was not the same as being healed. In January 2024, she appeared in an interview with Hoda Kotb and said she was grateful to be alive. In May 2024, she was still using supplemental oxygen and said she had trouble breathing and even speaking for long periods. For a woman who had spent nearly 40 years giving speeches, that was its own kind of grief. The body that once launched her into history now needed help doing the most basic thing, breathing. And yet, through all of it, her daughters became the center of the story. Shayla, McKenna, Skylar, and Emma were no longer just the children of an Olympic champion. They were the women standing around their mother, protecting her, explaining for her, fighting for her, and absorbing criticism from strangers. Mary Lou once said her daughters were her greatest accomplishment. After 2023, that statement felt less like a sweet line from a proud mother and more like the truth. The perfect 10 made America love her, but the hospital room showed what her life had really produced. Not medals, a family that came running when she could not breathe. The Mary Lou Retton people remember is frozen in mid-air. That is how sports memory works. It keeps the leap, it keeps the smile, it keeps the flag. It keeps the teenage champion forever young, forever strong, forever standing beneath the lights in Los Angeles, with America cheering around her. But the Mary Lou Retton of today lives in a much quieter frame. She is no longer chasing judges' scores. She is no longer trying to prove that a small girl from West Virginia can stand against the best in the world. She has already done that. She did it when the country was watching. She did it with a repaired knee, a powerful vault, and a face that made millions of people believe they were witnessing something innocent and brave at the same time. Now the fight is different. It is slower, more private, less beautiful to watch maybe, but far more human. After her battle with rare pneumonia in 2023, Mary Lou described herself as grateful to be alive. She spoke about oxygen, scarred lungs, and a recovery that did not fit neatly into a comeback montage. She said the exact cause of her illness remained unclear, and that doctors still did not have every answer. That kind of uncertainty is hard for anyone. It must be especially hard for someone whose young life was built around routines, scores, and exact control. Gymnastics had always told her what came next. Run here, jump there, land now, smile, salute, wait for the number. Illness does not work that way. Illness makes a person wait without a scoreboard. It asks for patience without applause. It turns progress into small things other people might not notice. A longer walk, a deeper breath, a day with less fear, a conversation that does not leave you exhausted. For Mary Lou, those small things became victories, and in the middle of that recovery, another part of life kept moving. Her daughters were grown women now. Her family was changing. She spoke about looking forward to joyful milestones, including her daughter's wedding and becoming a grandmother. That detail matters because it moves her story beyond survival. She was not only trying to get back to who she had been, she was trying to stay present for who her family still needed her to be. That may be the most honest version of legacy. Not medals, presence. Mary Lou's career will always have its place in American sports history. The 1984 all-around gold medal remains one of the defining Olympic moments for a generation. She helped change what American gymnastics could imagine for itself. Before the long line of U.S. women who would become Olympic stars, there was Mary Lou sprinting toward the vault and making the impossible feel local, familiar, and close enough to touch. But legacy gets deeper when a famous person grows old in public. At 16, Mary Lou showed America what triumph looked like. In her 50s, she showed something harder to admit: That triumph does not protect anyone from divorce, pain, financial strain, illness, criticism, fear, or the simple fragility of needing help. Some people did criticize her when her daughters raised money for medical bills. They questioned the finances. They questioned the lack of insurance. They questioned the family's choices. But from inside the story, the picture looked different. It looked like 4 daughters trying to keep their mother alive. It looked like a woman who had once carried America's expectations, now being carried by the people closest to her. That is not weakness, that is life. The girl from Fairmont once gave the country a perfect landing. The woman she became has lived long enough to learn that most landings are not perfect at all. Some are painful, some are private, some leave marks, some require another person's hand just to stand up again, and still, there is something moving about the fact that she is here. Not preserved as a poster, not reduced to a medal, not trapped forever in 1984. Here, a mother, a survivor, a woman with scarred lungs, repaired joints, grown daughters, new family chapters ahead, and a name that still makes older Americans remember exactly where they were when she raised both arms into the air. Maybe that is why Mary Lou Retton's story still reaches people after all these years, because The Perfect 10 was never really about perfection. It was about a young girl meeting the moment when the moment demanded everything. And now, decades later, she is meeting another kind of moment. No judges, no crowd, no guarantee. Just breath, family, gratitude, and the stubborn will to keep going. So when you remember Mary Lou Retton, remember the vault, but remember the woman too, the one who had to live after the applause, hurt after the glory, ask for help after being called a champion, and keep fighting for ordinary days when ordinary days became precious. What do you remember most about watching Mary Lou Retton in 1984? And what would you say to her today after everything she has survived? If stories like hers still matter to you, stay with us. There are more legends whose lives after the spotlight deserve to be remembered.